There was so much like effort and time, and that I think that put into Football Index, and that's what I think hurts more than anything for me, was the amount of time I put into it. And Football Index had the slogan, "What's your football knowledge worth?" Well, as it stands today, nothing.
That was Fred, an islander who is facing losses of thousands of pounds after the collapse of Football Index. And I'm Fiona Potney. I'm the news editor of Bailiwick Express, and this is our podcast, which each week will provide a more in-depth look at some of the island's biggest news stories. When many people think of gambling, they might think of chiming slot machines, the odd flutter on the races, or even a game of poker in a casino or with friends. But now more betting platforms are emerging that don't look like this at all. They tend to be app-based, involve longer-term bets, and be more data and analytics-driven. Some perceive this as a safer and healthier way of gambling. Others have suggested this dangerously blurs lines. One of the great success stories of that new wave of betting tech was Football Index. Its parent company, Bet-Index, is registered in Jersey, and it was regulated by the Jersey Gambling Commission as well as the UK Gambling Authority. Football Index modelled itself on a stock market. It let users buy imaginary shares in their favourite players and receive a payout or dividend if they played well in real-life matches. Launched in 2015, it soon became a fixture of the sports betting sector. It even became a sponsor of Queen's Park Rangers and Nottingham Forest football teams. Last autumn, it told users it had never been in a stronger financial position and increased their dividends. Thousands of users poured more money into their fictitious investment portfolios in response. Then suddenly it collapsed last month. Both Jersey and the UK's watchdogs told it to stop operating and are now investigating what happened. It now risks becoming the biggest failure in UK gambling history, with punters standing to lose up to £100 million. Many have reacted furiously, many are embarrassed, thousands are seeking legal action. All want answers as to how the platform managed to grow so big and whether regulators had their eye off the ball ahead of its sudden demise. Fred from Jersey is one of them. He wants action from local politicians and Jersey's Gambling Commission to ensure such a crisis cannot occur again. Fred's not his real name, by the way. We changed it due to the personal details he shared with us. I sat down with him this week and started by asking him how the experience of using Football Index differed from traditional betting.
If I go into the bookies in town, I put £10 on, let's say, Manchester United to beat another team, and they either draw or lose, I will instantly lose that £10 and on the same day. However, with Football Index, you're betting on the career of a footballer rather than the outcome of a singular event. So, for example, we can say who's a high-profile footballer, Paul Pogba. One weekend he might drop the most awful performance of his life. However, if you're a holder of Paul Pogba on Football Index, the bet will carry on and carry on and carry on, and there are multiple ways of winning. It's not just based on player performance, it's also based on specific outcomes in a game. It's also based on their media attractiveness. So there's multiple ways of winning and accruing money from Football Index, or was rather, through capital appreciation or receiving dividends from what I've just mentioned. So yeah, that's how it was different, and I'm sure we'll come on to it a little bit later. But Football Index was sold as a product that was a safe haven for our money, and it was an alternative to the high street bookmakers. And they actually had a slogan very similar to what I just talked about, and they said that they were I can't remember the exact slogan, but it was a disruption to the traditional bookmakers who were dominating the high street, and it was this alternative it's not an investment vehicle, but a vehicle that you could gamble on. It was an alternative market out there that gave you a sort of a new perspective on football itself.
And is that what attracted you to it?
Absolutely, yeah. So if I had a favourite football player, I could bet on that football player to have a good performance that 1 week and for the 3 years after that. So it wasn't just if I put, for example, a common way to bet on traditional football is via an accumulator. So you could put 6 teams on to win that specific match. However, that 6-team accumulator has hundreds of different outcomes, win, loss, draw throughout. And it's very hard, obviously, to predict. It depends on the odds and the form of the team and whatnot. But it was a lot more analytical, which attracted me to it. You could base potential future dividend payouts based on past data, and for any football fan out there like myself will know that football is very data driven these days. For instance, Kevin De Bruyne recently just signed a new contract for Manchester City. He didn't actually use an agent, he used a data site or not a site. He would have had some sort of something a lot more high profile than that, but he used a lot more data to realize what his worth was. And data is a huge area within the football sphere at the moment, and it will continue to be so. So yeah, it was one that appealed to someone who liked the intricacies of the game, like myself. Not only that, it was just honestly one of the most brilliant concepts out there. It gave you a new perspective on football, football and gambling as well, independent of each other. Gambling for a time was a lot healthier for me. I wasn't spending as much as I would on a football accumulator, if at all. And yeah, it kind of redefined what sports betting was for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I know for a fact I'm not alone in that statement. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, whether they be on Twitter or Facebook or any social media site, they will back me up on that claim that it redefined what they thought good betting was and a good bet was.
And given your excitement for this platform, how much money did you first start off putting into it, and how did that change over time? Just
for the record, I'm not well off. I don't have a lot of savings, material savings, to put into Football Index. I have a mortgage to pay that obviously prioritises over anything else, and I have a life outside of it, and I know firsthand how gambling can escalate into something that is very, very bad. I have close friends who have unfortunately experienced bad things with gambling. But yeah, I started putting in £10, £20 here and there to start with until I knew what the platform was, how it operated, and then obviously that escalated to a point where I think I had a portfolio of worth about £12,000, which obviously is
a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Obviously that was unrealised. That was my original stake plus capital appreciation, dividends, etc. My portfolio value was around £12,000. Obviously, when you got to where I think I put 6,000-7,000 in to get to that point, I was over the moon. I thought I was an investment genius, or well, not investment. To reiterate that, I thought I was a genius because this amazing, innovative platform, which it was. I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, but unfortunately that didn't work out the way it planned. But I'm quite fortunate to have the partner I have, and that I have full transparency of everything with her. I know a lot of people who've put money into Football Index who have either, and not obviously encouraging this at all or condoning this, regardless of Football Index's actions, but they took a loan out or sold their house to put money in, and that's not on. But we'll come on to it later, why it may be perceived that it was an okay route to go down. But for me, that was never an option. I always, thankfully, I've gambled, but I've done it in a way what I can afford. It was in a material amount, but not enough to make me worried about losing it. But I'm still not too happy about losing it. But wasn't sweating every day, if you know what I mean. Worrying about how my money would turn out.
We know that for many people, they saw it as an investment product, even though fundamentally it was a gambling product. And you've talked about how you ended up with quite a large portfolio, about £12,000, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What gave you that level of trust that you could put quite significant amounts of cash into it as a vehicle?
So Football Index have quite a unique community in the fact that a very passionate community, one that above all wanted the platform to succeed. Me included, I was the biggest advocate. I was telling my friends and, about this great platform that, you can't lose, but it's just a fantastic concept. It will change the way you view sports betting. And that was backed up by numerous things. So Football Index gained credibility through working with NASDAQ, who are a technological, obviously, company within the United States. They back companies like Football Index to help implement technology within the company. Obviously, a name like NASDAQ, NASDAQ wouldn't work with a company that wasn't at least somewhat reputable. Football Index sponsored two major teams in the UK, such as for example, QPR, Queen's Park Rangers, and Nottingham Forest, two huge clubs in the Championship, one step off the Premier League, the biggest league in the world for advertising. So they clearly had money for advertising budget. Football Index were dubbing themselves to soon have a £1 billion market cap. At one point, it was 120 million at its peak. So that was believable. I think a lot of people thought it was far-reaching, but when you're in the middle of it, you think, oh, actually, if this carries on the current trajectory, this is quite well possible. There was also another project, Project Hadron, which was Football Index planning to expand into new territories such as Germany. Football Index only were available in the UK, Ireland, and I think it was Canada, but not to the same extent as the UK. That's a small amount of the world at the end of the day. There was so much more out there. So there was prospect of new money coming in from different countries. And even the UK market hadn't been properly it hadn't been maxed out. There was another one, Tech Track 100. So Football Index were voted second in the UK. So it's showing credibility. So it was the Sunday Times. They ranked the top 100 companies in the UK for the technology. Football Index ranked second, which is huge. I mean, that's massive.
Wow.
Incredible. Felt like a bubble that wouldn't burst. I was more shocked than anyone to realise, that they came out and filed for administration.
Were there any warning signs at all? I mean, it sounded like, as you say, this was an incredibly exciting time. Was there anything at all that made you think, oh, hold on, something's not right here, or maybe my money isn't as secure?
Football Index 7 months, I believe, prior to filing for administration, they cut dividends by. They increased dividends. They doubled them. So obviously, if you're doubling dividends, that is huge. Doubling dividends ultimately, for those out there who don't know how the platform operates, dividends drive a player's price. So you buy, for example, this purely hypothetical. You buy Paul Pogba at £1. You're buying Paul Pogba for £1 on the assumption that he will get those dividends throughout the life of his his career. That's obviously that's what drives a player's price. So dividends that you can get via many different ways. Ultimately they doubled dividends, so that's huge. If that will, using simple logic, that could mean that your player doubles in value just overnight. So that was huge. However, there was sort of whispers around the community months after, saying Football Index couldn't afford to carry on the current path, paying double dividends, or normal dividends as it was then, because they simply didn't have enough money coming into the platform. And that showed when I think 2 or a week prior to Football Index filing for administration, they slashed dividends by 80%, which obviously has an adverse effect on the price of players, and your portfolio gets slashed pretty much 80% overnight. It's not a nice feeling. And then you started to feel like, hang on, why are management doubling dividends 7 months prior to filing for administration? Well, they obviously didn't know at that point, but why are they doubling dividends and then backtracking? They should have done some sort of solvency test, or they should have known the financial robustness of their business. And this is where you need to look at the role of the regulators, but that's another story. So there are serious questions around how Football Index were allowed to do that, and how they could possibly do that on the assumption that they had viability in the future. It just doesn't make sense to a lot of community.
Well, we know that some gambling campaigners, they actually suggested that regulators, they used the phrase, were asleep at the wheel in relation to this. Did it feel like that?
It absolutely did. Yeah, it did feel they were asleep at the wheel. So Adam Cole, who was the founder and CEO of Football Index, he came out in an independent podcast, I think it was a year ago or two, and he said that even the Gambling Commission did not understand Football Index business model. How could that be possible? I didn't see this interview ever before filing for administration, but it popped up through Twitter or something, social media. I saw it and I was like, if the Gambling Commission does not understand a company's structure that they're regulating, how can you trust the Gambling Commission at all? But this is a live investigation, so we will see what happens. And I'm not pointing fingers at all. I'm just very curious how this could happen, and I'm very interested to see the outcome. As we all know, this has been mentioned in the House of Lords recently. A lot of people are writing to their MPs, myself included, although we don't have MPs. I've been writing to local representatives. I've been writing to the Gambling Commission. I've been writing to various people, and they all share the same concern as me, albeit the Jersey Gambling Commission commented that it was a live investigation, so it couldn't go into much more detail. But yeah, it's extremely worrying. And the thing that really got me was that people were saying, well, and it's easy for people to come out and say, hang on, you put thousands of pounds into a gambling platform, you should know that isn't safe gambling, and you should only bet what you can afford, and thousands of pounds shouldn't be going in there. But in my view, it wasn't us that gambled recklessly. Our bets changed overnight. That's just, how can that happen? So it was more of a company gambling irresponsibly with our money rather than ourselves gambling irresponsibly. And I think that's the key sort of takeaway from this. As I alluded to before, I have a very close friend who's suffered at the hands of gambling. I know full well the impact, and it needs to be regulated sufficiently. That's fundamentally what needs to happen here. So the Gambling Commission has a duty of care over consumers like myself. I gambled on Football Index on the assumption that I would be, my money would be somewhat, regulated. That just hasn't been the case. It seems like they've cast a blind eye on this occasion. Like I said before, they said that they don't understand fully the business model, and I just don't understand how that makes sense. And the Gambling Commission awarded Football Index something called a Tier 1 operator's license in the UK. But Tier 1's the highest. Like, for example, you've got Bet365, you've got Sky Bet, the household gambling names, gambling companies out there that everyone will know. They have Tier 1 gambling license. They have a Tier 1 gambling license, but Football Index did too. So if that could happen to Football Index, albeit it's a more complicated platform than Bet365 that's traditional gambling, consumers should be aware that this could happen elsewhere. And this is a multi-billion pound industry. It really doesn't sit well with a lot of people, including myself. And there needs to be serious questions for people at the top of this. Ultimately, in the case of Football Index, where has our money gone? Who knows? Because after doubling dividends, they quite clearly had the money. Paying out dividends then slashed it by 80%. who knows where it's gone.
I know that obviously that these live investigations are underway with the Jersey Gambling Commission and the UK Gambling Commission, but we've also been told by Football Index that they are looking to launch, if they can, in a restructured form after the current processes are complete. Do you think you could ever trust it again?
It's a great question. That is a great question. On one hand, yes. On one hand, no. Obviously, what's happened is still very fresh. I think it's been about a month since Football Index filed for administration, and it's been tough for myself and a lot of people. So obviously, losing the amount of money that I lost is going to have implications on your life. We're planning to save for things, and as I said, I have full transparency with my partner, so we were planning to spend the money on something because it was a safe haven. We thought it was a safe haven, but at the end of the day, how can you trust people like this again that it's happened? I mean, I'm currently in the middle of engaging lawyers, like many of the community are. So there's a firm in the UK that's handling it essentially on a no win, no fee basis. So hopefully there's a positive outcome with that. If it's a restructured format, as I said, like Football Index, genuinely innovative. One of the most incredible platforms I've ever been a part of, and I don't, as bad as it sounds, I don't regret it. From the fact of it changed my perception of football, and it changed my whole understanding, and there was so much like effort and time, and that I think that put into Football Index, and that's what I think hurts more than anything for me, was the amount of time I put into it. And I did put quite a lot of time in researching, and Football Index had the slogan, "What's your football knowledge worth?" Well, as it stands today, nothing. But at the time, I was flying, and it was such good fun. But if they ever reform or relaunch again, myself and other users would need the assurances that something like this could not happen again.
Thank you to Fred for sharing his experience. If you have an experience with Football Index or any other betting platforms you'd like to share, please get in touch by emailing editor@bailiwickexpress.com. Express will be continuing to report on this story as it unfolds. You can follow those updates on bailiwickexpress.com, our daily news email, and on social channels. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and share, it all helps. And in case you're interested, the title track was I Shift My Weight by Luno. Thank you for listening. More next Friday from me, Fiona Potney, and the team here at Bailiwick Express.